and welcome to another episode of my vinyl and music collection. And this week we're going to delve into my love of glam rock, which had been a genre primarily in the UK between 1971 and I'd say early 1976. And this genre of music, it influenced so many other musicians, especially across the pond in America. Without doubt, we had bands like Kiss who were influenced by Slade. We had Motley Crue who were influenced by The Sweet. Quiet Riot, their biggest hit was Come On Feel the Noise by Slade. British band called Oasis were a huge Slade fans, and Noel Gallagher actually cited How Does It Feel as one of the greatest pop songs ever written. And we're going to start with Slade, and to me, the greatest glam rock band to grace any stage, and one of the greatest rock bands in the world, without doubt. They have had number ones in nearly every continent. The only continent, or the only country that they didn't really conquer, was America, but they still had hits there, and Quiet Riot had a number one there with one of their songs. But they had number ones all over Europe, Australia, and we're going to start off with their second number one album, and this is called Sladest. The reason I want to go for Sladest is because it gives the fan of Slade who are not really into the complete in depth of Slade, and they know the hits. Well, Sladest wasn't the greatest hits, but it was the best of what they were doing at the time. Probably their set list at gigs, and some of these songs will go back to around 1969. And the first track in here would be called Wild Winds Are Blowing. Now, Slade, around this time, had been converted by Charles Chandler, the manager, to become a skinhead band. And they did look the part. They looked pretty mean. If you go on YouTube and put Wild Winds Are Blowing Slade, you'll see them playing with all their skinhead gear on, and they looked mean, and the songs were brilliant as well. And Wild Winds Are Blowing is one of my favourite songs. Didn't chart, but Charles Chandler was beginning to mould this great band. Shape of Things to Come is another great song. Wasn't written by Slade. I think it was a hit maybe for the Yardbirds. Their first song on Polydor didn't chart, but we could see where things were going. Fourth track was called Pook Hill. It's a really lovely ballad. It's about a beauty spot in Wolverhampton. One Way Hotel, now that is a real dark song. One Way Hotel, it's about life at the bottom really, and there's no way out. A bit different for Slade later on, because their songs were a little bit more happier than that. The next song is their first number one, and that's called 'Cause I Love You. Another personal favourite of mine. I've actually played this at gigs, and it's a great song. Jim Lee and Noddy Ola will both say that it's very influenced by the blues and by Django Reinhardt. Side 2 starts off with Look What You Done. Again, this was a top 5 single, didn't get to number 1. Take Me Back Home. Now that was a number 1 single, and a brilliant stomper again. And then we've got some classic Slade. Now we have Mama We're All Crazy Now. Irish band called the Mama's Boys released this one. Quiet Riot released it as a single as well. Goodbye to Jane, another classic Slade song. Look at Last Night was a B-side, and some of Slade's B-sides could have been quite easily been A-sides as well. The last two tracks in here are absolutely seminal, and the last but one track's called Come On Feel the Noise, which Oasis covered, and Oasis do cite Slade as a massive influence. And Quiet Riot, the American heavy metal band, released this, and this helped them get their album to #1. And Squeeze Me Please Me was #1 when this album was released. And one of the reasons why this album was released, there was lots of momentum for Slade around this time. They'd had a #1 album about a year before. Don Powell, the drummer, was in a very serious road accident. It was a car crash. His girlfriend was killed. Don Powell was seriously hurt. He was in a coma for weeks, and he never really regained his memory. So they had to keep the momentum going. There was a new album in the pipeline called Old New Borrowed and Blue, but they had to release something. So Charles Chandler came up with, let's release this, the best of what you were doing at the time. So there was the hits on it, and there was the early stuff as well, which was absolutely great. It's a gatefold sleeve, and it's got a little booklet in it. Go through it quickly. Noddy holder, vocals, rhythm guitar. Dave Hill, lead guitar. There's a picture of them in their Glam regalia. Brilliant. My favourite of the band would have been Jim Lee, without doubt the beating heart of Slade. He was a multi-instrumentalist. He was classically trained, piano, violin, cello. He played brass instruments, fantastic bass player, and he played the bass like he would play a lead guitar, and he would come up with a lot of the melodies, a lot of the riffs for all those Slade classic songs. And obviously Noddy Holder and Jim Lee were the co-writers of all the hits, really. And to me, the greatest drummer which this country has produced, and that's Don Powell. Back in 2011, I had the privilege of being Slade's tour agent in Portugal, and me and Don Powell, we got on really well, and we became close friends, and we're still in contact. He's such a lovely man, such a lovely man. Obviously, I met Dave Hill as well, but Dave Hill is a different animal to Don Powell, and I got on really well with Dave Hill. But Don Powell, what a gentleman, what a lovely guy, and it was just a privilege to actually be the tour agent. And I'll tell you a little secret, I never actually told him I was in the fan club, and I didn't tell him I owned any of the Slade albums either. So I kept that one to myself, so I kept it all quite professional. Sladest, all of Slade's hits, well, 90% of them came from the Polido label, and they, as I said, they had 6 #1 singles, they had 3 #1 albums, and they had #1 albums across the world, and they had #1 hits across the world as well. Obviously everyone remembers Merry Christmas Everybody, and that isn't my favourite. So if you only know Slade for Merry Christmas Everybody, I would implore you to have a little check out on Slade. And this is a great album to actually discover Slade. That is Sladest, a #1 album which was really produced to keep momentum going when Slade were absolutely huge. There hadn't been a band since the Beatles who compared to Slade. They were absolutely, they were manic. There was mayhem. The gigs that I've seen this band this lineup 3 times, and still the loudest, chaoticest nights I've ever had. Absolutely brilliant, brilliant. Sladest and Slade, my #1 album. Second album will be Slade's adversaries at the time, and obviously close friends, but they were in competition with this band, and that band would have been T-Rex, and this album is Electric Warrior. It's released in 1971, led by the enigmatic Mark Bolan. We lost very young in a car crash in 1977, and we were lucky to have a lot of his work. Now, different from Slade, Slade had a fan base of skinheads, of football fans, rowdy people or whatever. Mark Bolan came from a little world of maybe a bit hippie-ish. Definitely blues and definitely rock and roll, especially Chuck Berry. You can hear it in his riffs and his licks, and he played wonderful guitar. He played a Gibson Les Paul, and it was nearly bigger than him. But this is a great album, and it consisted of Mickey Finn, who was his greatest friend as well, apart from being a band member. Steve Curry, Will Legend, Ian MacDonald, Bert Collins. This album would have been on the AM label, and classic songs in here. Classic songs, and track 1 would be Mambo Sun. Track 2 is one of Mark Bolan's most famous songs, and still played to this day, and that's called Cosmic Dancer. Really lovely song. Jeepster, personal favourite of mine, love it. Monolith. Track 5 and the last track of side 1. Now we're coming into Mark Bolan's bluesy influences, and this track is called Lean Woman Blues. It's really great, really great. I really do rate Mark Bolan as a really great guitar player. Side 2, I think many of us, even the younger fans, would have heard of the song called Get It On, and that is one of his classic songs again. Track 2, Planet Queen. Track 3, Girl. Track 4, The Motivator. Track 5, Life's a Gas. I love that one. That's a great song. And track 6, Rip Off. These albums back in the day of this glam rock genre, there was never any fillers. These were all great songs. Each and every one of them could have made a single and charted really highly. Got a great little inner. So we've got nice little etching style thing, picture of Mark Bolan, and that's Mickey Finn, his best friend and his co-musician. So that is T-Rex, Electric Warrior. Great album. I certainly believe that the next artist, he released this album in 1973, and I still think this is greatest album. Now, this artist has sold over 300 million records worldwide. #1's in America, UK, all over the world. He is absolutely legendary. And the album is called Goodbye Yellow Brick Road by Elton John. Not a big thing to say, but I think this is Elton John's Sgt. Pepper. It's a wonderful album. It's a wonderful album. Really creative. Some great songs on here. Some good rock songs. There are some pop songs. There are some darker songs as well on it. And it's a double album. Again, it's not just a gatefold. it's a triple gatefold. Lots of reading here. This is the great thing about vinyl, isn't it? You know, it's like having a book in front of you. And Elton John's co-writer would have been Bernie Taupin. Bernie Taupin would have written the lyrics, and Elton John would have composed the music. And some of the songs in here are absolutely iconic. I'll come to one of them now. But side one consists of Funeral for a Friend. That's a lovely, lovely song. Love Lies Bleeding. Candle in the Wind. Well, that holds a lot of memories if you're a royalist. I'm not personally a royalist, but I was an admirer of Princess Diana, a commoner who married into royalty. And the song which Elton John and Bernie Taupin wrote for this album was called Candle in the Wind. And it was about Marilyn Monroe. But it was adapted for Princess Diana's funeral. And it's an absolute great song. Not my favourite song on side one. I gotta say, my favourite song on side one will be Benny and the Jets. That's a great rock and roll song. That's got Little Richard and everything kind of wrapped in one there. Absolutely great song. Side two again opens up with the title album, and that's Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, and that is such a great song. Love it. This song has no title. Grey Seal, Jamaica Jerk Off. It's a great song. I've seen that movie too. Then we move to the second record of this double album. Side 3 will be Sweet Painted Lady. The Ballad of Danny Bailey, 1909 to 1934, and it's a biographical song, that is, and it's a great little number. Dirty Little Girl, and All the Girls Love Alice. Side 4, Your Sister Can't Twist, but She Can Rock and Roll. This is a great album. I'm not, you know, if you want to get into Elton John, seriously get into his early 70s stuff. It was iconic. This is my favourite song of side 4, which is Saturday Night's Alright for Fighting. Great song. Maybe Slade should have done something like that, you know, for some of the fans. Roy Rogers, Social Disease, and the last track is called Harmony. And I really do love this album. And he had a brilliant band behind him too. And obviously we had Elton John, we had Davy Johnston on lead guitar, we had Dee Murray, he'd have been on bass, Nigel Olsson, and obviously we've got Bernie Taupin, who actually does some harmonies as well on this album. But there they all are, his band. We've got the lyrics of the songs, some great pictures. And this would have been a #1 album in 1973. Elton John's Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. Great album. Give it a spin. Another iconic band of the glam rock genre, and again another adversary for T-Rex, for Elton John and for Slade, and that would have been The Sweet. This album's called Desolation, Boulevard, and the biggest shock about this album is it didn't chart, but it is known to be one of the classic glam rock albums of the day. Now this is a limited edition re-release with bonus tracks on it. And even just for track 1 on here, and it's called The 16s, one of my favourite Sweet songs. Absolutely love it. And you've got to realise that Sweet released some legendary songs: Blockbuster, Ballroom Blitz, Coco, Can the Can, Love Is Like Oxygen, Fox on the Run. But unfortunately, in the UK, couldn't get the chart positions. But they went over to America and they said glam rock will never take off in America. But Sweet had five charting singles, and this album, which didn't chart in the UK, charted at number 25 on the Billboard 100. So it's just amazing. They said they didn't want glam rock because they were still licking their wounds over in America, over Vietnam, and they wanted more kind of James Taylor, Carole King, Joni Mitchell style music. But the Sweet seemed to crack something over there. They were quite different from Slade. The riffs were different. Motley Crue cite this band as one of their influences as well. So and I can see why. This album is absolute beauty. And me being a Welshman, there's one Welshman in this band. Unfortunately, we've lost 3 members of the Sweet. So we've lost Brian Connolly, Steve Priest and Mick Tucker. And the survivor now is called Andy Scott. And he's from Wrexham in North Wales. And he still keeps the Sweet name going. But I did love the Sweet. Even though you weren't supposed to say that you either liked Sweet or Slade, you couldn't say you liked the two of them in school. You know, that was a no-no. Great gatefold sleeve. And the tracks in here would be the 16s, which is to me one of the teenage angst songs of the time. Track 2, Solid Gold Brass. Track 3, Turn It Down. Track 4, Medusa, Lady Starlight. Now the two bonus tracks on side 1 is Someone Else Will. I won't tell you what that song is about. It could be young years listening. Misdemeanor would be the other bonus track on side 1. Side 2 kicks off with a really Oochie Coochie Man, Muddy Waters blues jam. It's absolutely brilliant. I love it. I actually jam along with my guitar to that song. Track 2 on side 2 is again one of their iconic songs, Fox on the Run. Great song, love it. Track 4, My Generation. And there's 2 bonus tracks then at the end of this one. I Want to Be Committed and Burn on the Flame. If you like Motley Crue and Hanoi Rocks and these sort of early 80s metal bands, give the Sweet a go. Really brilliant British band. They burnt brightly, and it's just sad to think the 3 of them now have gone, and we've still got Andy Scott. Desolation, Boulevard, brilliant album. We had another band in the glam rock days which were charting quite a lot, and they had a Christmas hit which vied with Elton John and Slade for the #1 spot in 1973. The band would have been called Wizard. And the only album I've got of Wizard, it's The Best of Roy Wood, Well, Roy Wood was Wizard, basically. His first band were The Move. He helped create then, from Move went to ELO, the Electric Light Orchestra, and Roy Wood stayed with them, but apparently there was some personal problems between him and Jeff Lynne, and he left and he created Wizard. I was a massive Wizard fan. I thought, again, a rock and roll band more than anything, you know, but he was glam personified. Great guitar player. They were a great band, and people of my age will probably recognize 75% of these songs. And the first one is Ballpark Incident. That's a great rock and roll song, released in 1972. Tonight, released in 1971 as a single. Brontosaurus, released in 1971. Until Your Mama's Gone. Angel Fingers, that is one of the big hits. That's another great song. When Grandma Plays the Banjo, and California Man. So that's side one. Really, you will not be disappointed in listening to some Roy Wood and Wizard. Side two probably opens up with my favourite Wizard song of all time, See My Baby Jive. And that would have been up there with anything T-Rex or Slade or Martha Hooper released. Track two would have been Chinatown, Deary Lane, When Alice Comes Back to the Farm, Forever. Last but one track is their seminal Christmas song, and it's still charting to this day, which competed with Slade and with Elton John in 1973. I Wish It Could Be Christmas Every Day. It is a great song. Obviously, Merry Christmas Everybody by Slade is my favourite, but I've got a soft spot for that one. And the last track in this album would be called Going Down the Road, a Scottish reggae song. This is the best of Roy Wood, 1970 to 1974. I see some great pictures of him in there. There's Roy in the front. Quite scary person, really. And we've still got the price tag on this album. I didn't buy this album new. I've had this album many years. But it was bought brand new in Boots, which is a British pharmaceutical shop, for £2.25. Bargain. Roy Wood and Wizard. Another great band around the early mid-70s, definitely glam rock band, and definitely were vying for positions with all the other seminal bands, Slade, T-Rex, etc. That would have been Roxy Music and Brian Ferry. Now this is a best of. I never really had any Roxy Music albums. I love this stuff. Virginia Plain, they were all great songs. Hard Rain's Gonna Fall, Pajama Rama. They were a brilliant band. They were a glam rock band, but they had a touch of avant-garde with them, and they had a brilliant synthesizer player called Brian Eno, who went on and produced so many great artists and is still producing great artists. Always loved Roxy Music, always loved Brian Ferry, and these were there right in the middle of the glam days. Gatefold sleeve. And the tracks in here would be the ones I remember as a youngster. I'd only be 10 years of age, when maybe younger. Virginia Plain, A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall, Pajama Rama, I remember that one. That was an absolutely brilliant song. The most weirdest and the most catchiest of songs by Roxy Music was called Do the Strand. Loved that one. Track 5, These Foolish Things. Again, it's a double album. Every song is a killer. Side 2, Street Life. Again, that is another seminal Roxy Music song. Let's Stick Together. That would have been nearly a cover of the Canned Heat song, Let's Work Together. Track 8, Smoke Gets in Your Eyes. Great, fantastic. It's got a little bit jazzy with that one. Track 9, Love Is the Drug, released in 1975. Track 10, Sign of the Times. The second record, Dance Away. Now we're coming up a bit later now, so not so much Glam, but he was kind of influencing like the new wave of modern, you know, we're talking the Spandau Ballets and all these bands, you know. So we had songs like Dance Away, Angel Eyes, Oh Yeah, Over You's a great song, Same Old Scene, In the Midnight Hour. That's an absolute brilliant one. That's an R&B song written by Steve Cropper and Wilson Pickett. More Than This, one of my favourite Brian Ferry songs. Avalon, I bought the album Avalon when it came out, and you know, we're coming up to 1982, but you know, it's like, you know, we're kind of lucky that Brian Ferry carried on this great music, as did Slade. Slave to Love, and it finishes off with the classic John Lennon song. And I didn't think anyone could really do Jealous Guy as good as John Lennon, but Brian Ferry did an absolute wonderful job. And that is Brian Ferry and Roxy Music. I wish I did have some of their early albums, but I did manage to pick this one up many years back, and it's a classic glam rock of the day and further on as well. Roxy Music, Brian Ferry, great band. We had another great singer-songwriter who was around in the glam rock days. I did really like him. I thought he was quirky, he was a great writer, and he wrote a lot of songs with Roger Daltrey, which people don't actually realise, but he wrote great songs. And that would have been Leo Sayer. Now this was his second album, and his first album is, we're going to have a little look at that later as well, but we'll have a little chat with this one now. we first saw Leo Sayer on Top of the Pops, and he looked like this, that period doll, isn't it? Yeah. And we just sort of kind of amazed. We were watching Top of the Pops, and we got this weird fella dressed as a clown singing like an angel. I think this is my favourite Leo Sayer album. And side one consists of the song, first song, Telepath. Track 2, Train. Track 3, The Bells of St. Mary's, is a great song. Track 4, probably the first time I'd ever heard a Leo Sayer song. And this is when he was dressed as the clown. One Man Band, still one of my greatest songs. A bit later on, he wrote other great songs as well. Track 5, In My Life. Side 2, When I Came Home This Morning. Track 7, Long Tall Glasses. Track 8, Another Time. Track 9, Solo. And track 10 is another classic Leo Sayer hit, and that's called Giving It All Away. He was on the Chrysalis label, and he's got massive fans in the UK. I'm not sure if he's big in the States. I know he's huge in Australia. So to my American followers, Leo Sayer, check him out. Brilliant. Okay, I got to admit, the next artist is world renowned. I think again sold over 200 million records worldwide. I didn't buy any of his albums. I had enough of my plate, struggling with buying Slade and Sweet and T-Rex. But I did manage to get hold of David Bowie's Changes, and it's the greatest hits album. Now, I'm a big fan of David Bowie's guitar player at the time, Mick Ronson. And I opened up with a classic Mick Ronson riff, or whatever you want to call it. It's called The Genie. And absolutely love that song. And I love playing it. David Bowie was a bit on the dark side for us youngsters, you know. Even though we had what's known as the Bowie cut, it was the haircut. No, we looked like skinheads, but then we had this kind of feather cut Bowie cut as we called it in the day. And David Bowie's band were called the Spiders from Mars, and they were, yeah, I would definitely say on the edges. They were definitely glam rock, but they were definitely on the outside looking in, and I think that's where they wanted to be. David Bowie was one of the greatest writers this world would see. Very much into his artistic side, his avant-garde side, and it's some great songs in here, and it's all the classics: Space Oddity, John I'm Only Dancing, Changes, Ziggy Stardust, Suffragette City, oh, great song. Genie, my second favourite Bowie song. Diamond Dogs, Rebel Rebel, Young Americans, Fame. The last track in this best of album is my all-time David Bowie classic, my favourite of all time. And I do, when people ask me, I tell them what the track is, and they go, is it? And I go, yeah. The song is called Golden Years, and I absolutely love that song. Always have. Again, it had been around the time of my adolescence, and it just kind of hit me, that song did. And that is Changes. There's not much to it, just a white inner sleeve. And but I wish I'd bought albums like Aladdin Sane, but as I said, we didn't have much money as kids. So although I did admire David Bowie and the Spiders from Mars, I kind of bypassed them a bit, but the songs were always there. And there was another great song as well, The Laughing Gnome. I love that one. Anyway, David Bowie, I can't say too much more. We all know who he is. We all know the songs. The greatest, one of the greatest Brits we've ever exported, David Bowie. Right, are these glam rock? I think they are. ELO. Now, we were just talking earlier about Roy Wood. Well, Roy Wood was personified glam. He created ELO with Jeff Lynne, and a lot of you probably will remember, you know, the late 70s, 80s ELO, but as kids, we do remember them, you know, back in 73, 74, and even though they were playing kind of classical kind of rock, they looked glam. And the point about glam was you had to look like, you had to look glam, and they certainly did, and some great songs in here. Didn't buy their early albums again. I was a massive Wizard fan, so obviously Roy Wood would have been on one or two of these tracks, and the tracks would be side one, Evil Woman, Living Thing. I absolutely adored that one. I was always on at the discos. Can't Get It Out of My Head, Showdown, Turn to Stone, Rockaria. These were absolute absolute legendary songs. Side 2, Sweet Talking Woman, brilliant. Telephone Line, another Yellow classic. Mama Bell, Strange Magic, and the last track, I did love it, but I had a really good friend who always wanted this song played, and it's called Mr. Blue Sky. And all music and lyrics written by Jeff Lynne and produced by Jeff Lynne. A lot of you will probably know Jeff Lynne from the Traveling Wilburys. He's from the Midlands, he's from the Birmingham area. Brilliant songwriter, brilliant producer, brilliant arranger, brilliant singer, brilliant musician, and I'm proud that he's a Brit. Electric Light Orchestra. They were there in the mix with the glam rock, and definitely they are there with all those legendary glam rock bands we spoke about earlier. Yellow. I've got 2 Leo Sayer albums, and this is the classic Silverbird. This is Leo Sayer's first ever album. That's him on the back, all done up, and that's him on the front. He was right in the middle of glam rock. Yeah, he was a rocker as well. He wrote some great riffy songs. A lovely gatefold sleeve. There's our Leo over there. And this is the classic Leo Sayer album. Track 1, Innocent Bystander. Track 2, Good Night Old Friend. Track 3, Drop Back. The Show Must Go On. Again, that was one of Leo Sayer's big singles. The Dancer. Side 2, Tomorrow. Don't Say It's Over. Slow Motion. Oh What a Life. Why Is Everybody Going Home? This album was produced also by one of Britain's greatest rock and roll singers, late 50s, early 60s, and that would have been Adam Faith. And they were really close friends, Leo Sayer and Adam Faith. Plus as well, Leo Sayer wrote a lot with Roger Daltrey, and they did some great stuff together. Anyway, Leo Sayer, he is one of my all-time favourites, and love him. Right, I got one more album. It's my wild card. Now this band were joint headlines with Slade, Marty Hooper, with Sweet. They were Slade's best friends on the road. They didn't look like Glam. They still had the 12-bar blues of the Glam bands, and they had the heavy riffing and a bit more edgier, but they didn't look like Glam. They called them working class clothes. And the band would have been, and they had many hits, and they travelled with the Glam bands, and I'm going to put them in here. Status Quo, Blue for You, released in 1976, so we're coming to the end of the glam rock days. But if you do your research for Status Quo and early Status Quo, they kind of bunched in with the glam rock just for a few years, because they released some great albums, Hello, Pile Driver, Blue for You, and I think nearly everyone likes a bit of Quo, and they just became like our legendary band in the end. Next to Slade, Quo are the kind of granddaddies in our British kind of British glam rock and hard-edged music. Great album, great gatefold sleeve again. I'm throwing out the middle bit. That's the inner, and we've got all the lyrics on here. As you can see, they like their denim. I don't think you can do double denim anymore, can you? I think that's outlawed, double denim. Well, I've been told anyway. I wear black denim and blue denim on top. That's the inner, and that's the lyric sheets on it. And we've got the tracks. It's a great picture. It's Roxy and Parfit, heads down, head banging. And the tracks would be Is There a Better Day, Mad About the Boy, Ring of Change, the title track as well, Blue for You. I love that one. I think my favourite track on this side would be called Rain, and that's a great song. Love it. It's very atmospheric, Rain is. Side 2 will be Rolling Home. Again, it's another classic, Status Quo. That's a Fact, Erase Your Mind, and my favourite song of side 2 with Rain, it's joint number 1, and that's the Mystery Song. And that is my wild card, Status Quo, Blue for You, and they graced many stages with all the glam rock bands. They were really close friends with Slade, and they toured in America with Slade. They toured all over Europe, and at one point Jim Lee even played bass guitar on Top of the Pops after Alan Lancaster had left the band. Anyway guys, I'm going to let you go now, and I'll see you next week. And next week we're going to have rockers, and it's going to be like solos and duos of American and European and British fantastic singers. Take care everyone, and see you next week. See you next week, guys.